Okay, we are going live. I am going to start the class here very soon, but I want to just give everyone a chance to tune in to get some supplies, and I'll tell you what you might need here in a moment. I've been advertising that this is happening today, so hopefully everybody's just kind of ready for it. That we are doing a gentle yoga class today to really emphasize the lower body and particularly to tie into kind of the connection between the back of the legs and the hips and the lower back. That area that's typically, it is absolutely served by the sciatic nerve and typically has some problems, maybe some discomfort or functional issues around that space, sciatica or piriformis syndrome. I don't like to teach a yoga class that's like yoga for this because there's no magic pill that fixes something. What we're going to be working on is creating better communication, better ways of really connecting to this space, and in doing so, connecting to feeling grounded and safe and stable. So today is Earth Day, April 22nd, and it is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Earth Day started in 1970 as it kind of evolved. Dennis Hayes and a Wisconsin senator named Gaylord Nelson began the first Earth Day observation. And kind of interestingly that evolved into establishing the EPA and Clean Water Act and all of these things that really helped us to maybe hopefully preserve our Earth. And I think it's significant that we're coming together today on Earth Day 50 years later, and big questions are arising. Whether this is that we're moving in a positive way. Climate change is occurring. Of course, we have COVID-19 that is spreading. We cannot deny that we are global, and that the Earth, is a part of our vitality, a part of our health and wellness. So it matters how we connect. It matters how we listen. And so today's practice is going to be of connection and listening to our own physical manifestation of Earth, right? We are made of soil and water. Our flesh is directly connected to the earth, and through the earth we are connected globally to one another. So we're going to start with a meditation here in a few moments of just that feeling of connection, and then we'll move into a gentle yoga practice. This should be suitable for all participants. If you need to modify by not being on the floor, I think you can still do this class. You'll just have to be a little inventive. And I'm not going to show the chair modifications, but just know that most of the movements of the hips and legs can be done when we're laying supine, can be done from a chair, maybe with a little footstool or something in front of you, so you can rest your leg on the chair, or when we get into hands and knees, you can do a lot of that with your hands on a sofa or on a chair, and then we'll be coming into standing and then returning to a sitting posture. So I see some people coming on. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Yeah, we'll get started in maybe another moment or two. I want to just, while we're getting set up here, it may be helpful to have some sort of strap handy. It's not going to be absolutely necessary, but one of the moves that we're going to be doing, it may be helpful to have some support. So it doesn't have to be a fancy yoga strap. It can be anything, just to kind of help you hold the weight of your leg when we're laying down. Also, we'll be doing some movements for our hips and a little ball, a pencil, a book, anything that you might want to stick behind your knee to hold onto can be a really good prop as well. But again, not necessary. I have a block here as well. We will be doing some standing movements and a block or being somewhere close to a stair. Again, a book can be totally useful here, just something to kind of give you a little bit of a boost off the floor. So it doesn't have to be a yoga block again, just a big book or anything can do, okay? I see some people coming on. I'm seeing some comments. I am far enough away from the screen that I can't read the comments, and I'm going to try to be loud enough since I'm far enough away from the screen for you to be able to hear me well. All right, so teaching in a virtual world is interesting because I can't really connect to you all very well. But let's just do our best. Let's make the most of the time we have together and the connections that we can make in this time together. All right? So we will begin. Again, namaste and welcome to everyone who's joining me today for this gentle yoga class designed to help us connect and direct energy more efficiently, more clearly, having what we call a sattvic mind with our lower body. So sattva is the sense of clarity and connection. All right, so we're going to begin with laying on our backs on the floor, on the mats. And one thing I'm going to ask is when you lay back, if you feel like your lower back is arching or you can't get the backs of your knees firmly connected to the earth, then bolster your head, neck, and shoulders. You can use a blanket, you can use that block or a pillow, anything that just gives you enough tilt in your upper body to get your lower body connected and grounded. So I'm going to start to lay back now, and I have a pillow handy here. And as we lay back, again, we want to make sure that we have our legs fully extended, and I want the back of your legs to be connected to the earth. I'm going to sit up as you settle down. I'm going to adjust my light here just a little bit. But as you lay down, backs of the knees as close as possible to the earth. If even with bolstering you can't get those backs of your knees down, then maybe a blanket under your knees. That's fine. I'd like you to be able to extend your knees, but again, adjust for what's right for you. So laying back and lengthening your legs. And I'm going to encourage you all to just stay there. And as you relax back, I want you to just begin to feel the support beneath you. Notice what parts of your body are touching the mat. I've specifically asked you to try to get the backs of your legs to touch the earth. But notice what other parts of you are touching, are connecting. Feel the pressure against your skin. Imagine your body like a newborn's, soft, supple. And we've all maybe had the pleasure, the deep pleasure of holding a baby in our arms. And as they fall asleep, they get heavier. It's almost like they become more dense as they become restful. Let your body be like that. You are the beloved child being held by the Mother Earth. Melt into her. Feel her support. And let yourself be supported. Let the parts of your body that aren't touching the earth melt into the parts that are. So softening your jaw, the skin across your forehead, your hair falling back, becoming heavy. Softening the skin, the flesh across your chest, your shoulders, your arms becoming heavy. Your belly softening, melting out in all directions. The heaviness of your hips. The legs floppy, relaxed. So important that we take a pause. We have to find a way to begin in the place we are. Notice what it feels like to take this pause. Notice if you are solving problems that aren't currently present. It's okay. There's no judgment here. Just notice whether or not you have allowed yourself to come fully into the presence of your physical being, to this singular moment and this particular breath right here, right now. And maybe you imagine now that you're that child laying on the earth, laying in the grass, watching the clouds traveling across the sky. And your thoughts are like those clouds. You know, you see them, they may be interesting, but then they disperse, they evaporate, they move on. Until there's this kind of clarity. The sky is clear. There's this sense of connection, not only with the earth, but with the heavens above. And you are the matrix of connection. You are what connects heaven and earth. And just take one more moment here, feeling this sense of connection through you, through your flesh, through your consciousness, through your spirit of being. So now we're going to dive a little deeper into moving from feet, through legs, through hips, through the rest of our body until we come to the uppermost part of our body that when we're standing kind of draws our awareness upwards. But it starts with being grounded, being present, and being aware. So it starts with our feet. All right, because if we are moving most of our day around, standing, walking, we have to connect to the earth through our feet. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is just to wiggle your toes, take some big circles with your feet. I'm just going to bring my foot here forward. So big circles with your feet, wiggle your toes, stretch and flex your ankles and your arches, right? So just move your feet around as much as you possibly can. Wake up both of them. Notice maybe as you're waking up the feet, this feeling of energy is coming up through your body. You're feeling this, right? So again, I'm still laying down. I'm just moving my feet here so you can see, but just wiggling those toes, waking up your feet, stretching them out. If you need to, bring them up and give them a massage, right? It's totally okay. So remembering as we go through this practice, I'm making suggestions. You find your own path, your own way through awakening, through connecting. Now, once we've woken up our feet, I want you, as you're laying back, to take your legs and just maybe widen them out a bit. And I'm just noticing that as I lay back, it's hard to see me. So I'm going to kind of be popping up and down. But just as you're laying back, lengthening out your feet so they're just a little bit wider than your hips. Flexing your toes. Let me just adjust this camera here just a bit. One moment, please. All right, so flexing your toes. and your ankles. So your feet are still active. Legs are slightly wide apart. And now we're going to start to rotate our legs. I'm going to use some terminology here, but I think it will be helpful later on when we get into a little more complex actions. So I want you to turn your toes out. But as you turn your toes out, I want you to notice that you're also turning your knees out, and it's the outside of your knee that's moving closer to the earth, closer to the floor. This is called external rotation. We're turning things out towards the edges of our bodies. And then we're going to turn our toes in. But feet are still flexed, and as you turn your toes in, your ankles roll inward, your thighs roll inward, the inside of your knee moves closer to the earth. This is called internal rotation. So just take this back and forth, external rotation, internal rotation. As you're doing this, feel it. Notice what's moving. What do you feel in your thighs, in your hips? Not just in your feet, but through your whole legs, through your knees. Right? So just take a few more of these. You might pause as you turn your knees out, that external rotation. Pause and really, what do I feel happening in my hips? And then pause when your toes are turned in. Pause, take a couple breaths. What does that feel like? We're going to take one more, just nice, slow movement through external and then internal rotation. And then let your legs go. Hopefully you felt this energy starting to really percolate up through your legs. Now we're going to bend our knees. And as you bend your knees, the soles of your feet come to the mat. I would like you to just feel your feet on the mat. And again, maybe take your feet a little bit wider than hip width apart. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to let our knees just fall to one side. Doesn't matter which side. So I want you to feel the heaviness of your legs as your knees fall. Notice how the soles of your feet have rolled a bit on the mat. And notice that most likely your pelvis is rotated. So we're going to bring those knees up and we're going to take it the other way. And now you can see the back of my pelvis is rising up as my legs get heavy to the second side. Right, so not so much specifically rotating my hips. Notice how this feels different than when we were actively rotating just the thighs in the hip joint. And now the rotation's coming more up into your waistline, into your lower back. Right? So it's just passive. We're going to take a couple more of these. You can go at whatever pace you'd like. And then as you finish up, now I'd like you to start to get a little more active in your hips. Feeling your pelvis side to side, balance it, kind of press it down just gently into the earth. So now we're not just resting, but we're actually kind of rooting down through the lower back and into the pelvis. Feet are rooting down into the earth as well. And as much as you can, knees and heels are somewhat aligned here. So now then what I want you to do is just push down a little bit more with your feet. You might feel your pelvis rise up. We're going to take some pelvic tilts here, just a really nice way to warm up the lower back and to feel a little bit more action in the hips. When we kind of press our tailbone into the earth, arching our lower back, tipping forward towards the belly, it's an anterior tip of the pelvis. Tipping the other direction, kind of lifting your tailbone up, pressing your lower back in just a little bit. That press through the back of the body, posterior tilt of the pelvis. And again, taking that one or two more times, just nice and slow, moving through. All right, and then come to where you sense your pelvis is balanced between that front and back. Balance between that right and left, and again pushing a little bit more into your feet. You can absolutely come into a higher bridge here. If you want to lift your pelvis higher, just try not to do it from arching your lower back and getting that anterior tilt. If your pelvis comes off the floor, keep it neutral relative to your ribs, right? So you can see this line coming through. We're going to just play with another cue I really want you to think about here today, and I call it feet to the front of the shoes, feet to the back of the shoes. They're not going to move. I really grounded them, but I'm going to push towards my toes like I'm trying to slide to the front of the shoes. And then I'm going to pull towards my heels like I'm trying to slide to the back of the shoes. Notice, I just got a hamstring cramp doing that. Notice how you can feel your hamstrings more along the back of the legs when you're sliding those heels to the back of the shoes, right? So pushing towards the toes, pushing towards the heels, as if you were sliding to the front of the shoes and to the back of the shoes. Go ahead and let your legs go down. Let your hips go down, let your legs relax. If you need to give a little love to your hamstrings, feel free to. Stretch at any time. And if you get a cramp while we're doing these movements, and particularly in the back of the leg, the calf, the hamstring, anywhere along there, it's communication. It's telling you something, that maybe you haven't been using those muscles as much as you've been using your lower back. So if we have pain in our lower back, and when we're trying to not use our lower back, but use our legs, and suddenly we get pain in our legs from trying to use them, it's information. It's telling you that there's an imbalance. You're overusing one part, and when you're trying to use the other part, it's not readily available for you. All right? So we're going to get back into some of that rotation. What I'd like you to do is keep one foot grounded, pelvis flat. Lift your second leg so your hip is in a little bit deeper flexion. Flex your foot. The knee is going to be slightly bent here, but not deeply bent, because we're going to be doing the rotations, and your foot needs to be a little bit higher than your knee on the floor. So now then, externally rotate that leg. Your knee turns out, your foot turns in. I'm not swinging my thigh around in place, I'm rotating it. But the foot is spiraling. Okay, so the thigh is rotating, but not moving out or in. So again, I'm just practicing that rotation in the leg, noticing what it feels in this position. Now then we're going to turn the leg into external rotation, turn the foot in, the knee out, and now we're going to move the thigh away from the midline of the body. Try not to roll off of your other hip. Stay grounded on your foot and grounded on your hip. Keep the rotation happening, and we're just going to take maybe a few little pulses here. And if you need help with your hand, that's fine. I just want you to feel these rotational muscles in your hips waking up a little bit more. We're going to bring the knee back up. Now we're going to internally rotate the thigh. So my foot's kind of angling out. My knee, if it was on the floor, would be rotating towards the floor, towards the inside of my body, so internal rotation. I'm going to bring the leg a little bit across the midline of the body, and again, I'm going to pulse, and I start to feel a stretch through here. I'm just taking some little pulses. Inner thighs working hard. A few pulses, and then release. So come to the second leg. Again, getting grounded here, bringing the knee up. The thigh is about 90 degrees to your body. Flexing the foot, and the knee is slightly open. Start with just the rotations. So again, my thigh isn't moving in space, it's just rotating internal, external. After you do a few of those rotations, and again, play with the edges, pause a little bit. What do I feel? We're going to end with the external rotation of your knee. So again, the foot is kind of turned in at this point, but the knee, if I were laying on the floor, the outside edge of my knee would be rotated towards the floor. And now I'm going to bring that leg away from the midline of the body. So here's another term. This is called abduction, like abstraction, like you're pulling away from the midline of the body. Once I get there, again, I'm working on that rotation. Maybe you can see that a little bit more on this side. And I'm going to take some pulses, little slow pulses. Again, if you need help with your hand, or this is another point where you can maybe use your strap. If you feel like it's overwhelming, notice I'm not rolling off this hip. I'm staying grounded here. And then I'm going to bring the leg back up, knee slightly bent. My knee is pointing towards me. Now I'm going to internally rotate that knee, bring my leg towards the midline of the body, so adding it in, a deduction, adding it in, and with that rotation, taking some little pulses. I'm shaking a little bit. Not easy stuff. Again, if you get a cramp or anything feels uncomfortable, just pause. Just pause. Listen. Listen and connect. That's what this is about. All right, we're going to take that leg down. Ooh la la. Right? What do you feel happening through here? Now, we're going to extend our knee. We're going to repeat the same exercise, but we're going to extend our knees. And this is where a strap can really be helpful if you need to. So I'm taking my leg that's on the floor, extending, flexing my toes, trying to get that knee all the way down. The other leg is going into the air. So here's where, again, feel free to use your strap it around your foot, help hold the leg in place. Trying to get this knee straight, and if you have a lot of tension in the back of your hips and hamstrings, you might find that your leg has to be a lot lower, right? So just find the angle, and again, if you need help in this angle, use a strap. I'm going to start with just the simple rotations. I can now feel that my quadricep is working a little bit harder here, and again, that might be something that cramps up. If it does, give it a break. Use a strap to help with this knee extension. All right. And then as I complete my external rotation, I'm going to take that leg out to the side, abducting it, staying stable through my leg on the floor, and little pulses here. Oh, right? Waking up all around the hip. And then I'll come back up, internally rotate it, bring it across the midline of the body, try not to roll off this hip, and little pulses. Try to keep the rotation. This part is going to light up, right? This is getting into that, the IT band, the iliotibial band, the tension frontal latte, and the piriformis. All right, relax. Lengthen that leg out. Take a little break if you need to. The other leg comes into the air. Use a strap if you need to. Both feet are flexed. Pelvis is neutral. Start with just rotations. So you can see there's a lot of repetition here. Right? This is what our hips do. Right? They rotate, they flex, they extend, they AB and AD duct. They move towards the midline of the body and around. And here in a moment, we'll be taking it through that whole circumduction. But let's just figure out each part of this movement communication. End with the external rotation, take the leg out, little pulses here. Try to stay grounded. Nice. This is where I can feel my quadricep wants to cramp. Right? So if you don't have a strap, just put a hand there. Help it out. Bring it back. Internally rotate it. So again, rotating so the knee is turning inward, and then bringing it across the midline of the body and little pulses. Stay grounded. Little shaking. Shaking is okay. It means you're trying, you're communicating, your body's trying to do the task that's being asked to do. Relax. Release both legs. Give a little break. Okay, friends, we're going to be shifting into tabletop position into all fours. As we shift, if you want to, again, give your legs a little bit of love, feel free to. Hopefully everybody's doing well. So as we come into all fours, if you need padding under your knees, grab a blanket or some type of padding. A sofa cushion can work okay. We don't want to be too wobbly on the padding. And this is also where you may want a little ball, or again, a pencil, anything that you can stick behind your knees. As you come into all fours, just feel free to wiggle around. Do any movements that feel good. We're actually going to come off of our wrists fairly quickly and we'll be on our forearms, but this is a nice time to kind of warm up through the wrists. You know, you can take some cat and cow type movements, warm up through the whole spine. Notice the position of the pelvis, that tipping posterior, anterior of your pelvis as you're getting into this wiggly space. There'll be a tendency, again, if we tend to use our back instead of our butt and thigh, there'll be a tendency to probably anterior tilt, kind of drop the belly. So really feel that right now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down onto our forearms. We're going to find long neutral spine. So my head's going to be turning towards the camera, but I'd like, if possible, of course you can peek up every once in a while, if possible, turn your face down, lengthen all the way through the crown of your head. Take one leg, flex the foot, and extend it, keeping your foot on the floor. Right, so this is nice because I've got a lot of strength through my forearms to push back and to stretch through my calf and heel. Right. So just taking that moment, stretching what was probably giving you some communication when we were flexing. And we're going to flex it again here in a moment. Again, noticing your spine, really important. Now, once you're here, I'm going to start to think about, before I do this, I'm thinking about foot to the back of the shoe, right? Foot to the back of the shoe, thinking about it. I can feel my hamstrings starting to work. And I'm going to now slide my foot to the back of an imaginary clown shoe, really big. Toes are pointed down, my spine not collapsing when I lift the leg. So notice the difference here. Pushing, extending the hip, but not dropping the ribs, right? So keeping your spine as long as you can. And then we're going to start to bend the knee, bringing the foot kind of towards the butt and straightening it. Few times here, try to keep your foot fully flexed. Try not to drop your knee when you bend it. Lengthening out as if you're pushing on the mat again. One more time. All right, so bring that knee down. We're going to stay on the same leg. This is where, if you want to, you can grab a ball, put it behind your knee. I'm going to come up on my wrists now instead of being down on my forearms. Feel free to stay on your forearms, right? So again, neutral spine. I'm just coming up here because it's easier to talk, right? Neutral spine. Flex that foot without dropping your lower back. Lift your knee. Right, so I'm working on hip extension here. This is another place where you might get that little hamstring cramp. I'm holding onto the ball. Now I'm going to start that internal, external rotation of my hip. I'm trying to keep my pelvis still and rotating just through my thigh. And now we're going to add that circumduction. So I'm going to externally rotate, bring the knee out, come back to neutral, turn in, bring the knee forward. So I'm making circles through my hip joint. As fast as you can, try to keep the pelvis still. Try to work this through your hip, not your lower back. If you feel you're doing that, I'm just going to change directions here. If you feel you're doing it through your lower back more than your hip, take a break. It's fine. One more. And then release it. As we switch sides, feel free to maybe rest back in just a child's pose. If you'd like to take a more active pose, pressing back into a downward facing dog, feel free to. Just take a pause. Notice how your two legs feel. All right, and then as you're ready, we're gonna switch sides, okay? I think I'm just gonna, I'll just turn. All right, so this is my second side. You don't have to turn around. All right, I'm gonna put first, come onto your forearms. Whoops, forgot what I was doing. Come onto your forearms. Start by sliding the foot back, getting that extension, that feel of stretch. So pushing through my heel, toes on the ground. Now before I lift that leg, that sensation of sliding to the back of the shoes, right? You can probably feel your hamstring connecting. It's being talked to, starts to respond, communicate. We're gonna lift that leg, lift it without collapsing in your lower back. So it may not be, like sometimes we think we have to do the biggest move, but notice what happened. My leg went really high, but my toes turned out and my lower back collapsed, right? So I'm trying to keep the toes turned down. I'm trying to keep the lower back neutral. And this is harder even though it's not higher. And then keeping my thigh in position as much as I can, flex and extend that leg, slow. Act like you're going through mud. All right, bring it down. Again, here's an option to put something behind the knee. It just helps you remember that you've got the back of your knee active, right? If you want to put heavy weights back there, feel free to. I'm not going to do that. My legs are heavier enough, right? So again, you can absolutely stay in this position. If you want to come up a little bit higher, change positions, that's fine. Long spine, neutral pelvis. Grab that ball behind your legs or just squeeze the back of your knee, lifting your heel. Now start the rotation, internal, external. And this is, again, I have, you'll notice probably I have different mobility capacities on my two hips. This is the one I'm working on healing, so I'm going to be gentler with it. I'm hearing it. It's talking to me. Now, external rotation, coming into abduction, moving away from the midline of the body. From there, circling around back to neutral. Internal rotation, coming towards the inside of the body, making a circle with my knee. Keep the foot flexed, doing your best to keep your lower back still. You can see I'm struggling a little bit more on this side. My back's like, I can help. I know how to do this, right? Changing directions as you're ready. Take a break. Rest in child's pose. Stretch in a downward facing dog. Take a moment. Notice what your body's telling you. What do you feel? We are going to make the shift now into standing. So I probably have to tip my my camera again. I'm going to zoom in on you guys. While I'm doing that, feel free to move in any way that you'd like. Take your time coming from the floor to standing up. If you want to take a little flow, if you're more of a power yoga kind of person, take a flow. You've got a couple of moments here. I'm going to tip my camera up and I'm going to meet you standing. I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay, so I'm even further away from the camera. I'll try to really project my voice. Hopefully the audio is good. So many challenges to online teaching. I don't know if you guys heard my story about my microphone disaster. So I'll tell that as we go. I'm just taking a wide stance like we did at the beginning of our class. I have my toes pointed forward here and my feet are wider than my hips. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to rock my weight side to side, letting my weight shift from right to left. So again, a nice passive movement. So as we shut down and we were going towards some online classes, I realized, audio is going to be an issue because for me to be on screen, I have to be far away. But I don't have any revenue coming in, so I bought a really cheap microphone. And oh my God, I did some trial recordings and it cut out, in and out, just if I moved in a funny way. One point I bent over and I actually turned it off. If it was on the back side of me and I laid down, it was intermittent. It was a mess. Turns out you have to spend a lot of money to get good audio. So we're doing the best we can with what we've got. All right, so again, we're just noticing what it feels like shifting our weight side to side. Now, what I'm going to encourage you to do is shift your weight. Just pick one leg. We'll be doing both. Shift your weight as far as you can to one leg. So I'm kind of doing a little side bump here with Tim. And as I shift my weight, notice how my body is tilting laterally to get that weight to be transferred over. And that's fine. Go ahead and let your body tilt. Push your weight over to one leg as far as you can. Now, notice the position of your legs relative to your body. So this leg that I'm tipping towards is abducting. It's moving away from the midline of the body towards my outside edge. This leg is moving towards the midline of the body. Notice the weight in your feet. Are you tipping towards inner or outer edges of your feet? Is the weight in your heels or in your toes? And then finally, notice if you sense your hips are internally or externally rotated. They might, like right and left sides might be different, and they might be different when we tip the other way, right? So we have done all this work to create awareness, right? So whichever way, like I sense both my knees, if I kind of bent them, they'd collapse inward. My thighs are internally rotated. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bring my thighs towards neutral. So for me, moving towards neutral feels like I'm externally rotating it. But now if I bend my knees, their trajectory is forward. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to really drive my weight into my heel on my tipped away from side. And then I'm going to start to slide that foot to the back of the shoe. I want you to notice what happens as I'm rotating, getting grounded, actively grounded, and then driving to the back of the shoe. Notice how my body started to tilt up. Now I'm going to try to bring this leg more into neutral with my body. So that outer hip is being active. Right? So again, weight shift, active neutral thighs, active groundedness, active posterior body, foot to the back of the shoe, and then righting myself in air. Same leg, you guys. We're going to take it underneath us. So I'm staying on this side. It's my left side. And again, I'm going to shift my weight as far as I can. Notice what's happening with my legs. Are they internal, external, neutral? This is subtle. This is why we learn these sensations and these terms. Moving them towards neutral, getting grounded, but actively grounding, rooting down through my heel, and then foot to the back of the shoe. I have just been corrected. I am upright. Now, if I just actively engage this outer hip just a little bit more, what happens is my other leg is suddenly floating. I'm balanced on this leg. All of that work's happening, rotation, groundedness, foot to the back of the shoe, and just a little bit of this adduction. All right, a little bit of balance work. Shake it out if you need to. This is where we're going to be using a block or a book, something to take this leg a little bit higher. So I'm going to grab a block. Again, you don't have to have a yoga block, nice big book. Doesn't have to be 4 inches, can just be a couple of inches. Doesn't matter, it can be a stair. I'm going to put my foot up on the block, shift my weight over. Think about the steps. Rotation, groundedness, foot to the back of the shoe, hip moving more underneath me, more aligning. Other leg starting to float. Now I'm just going to go in and out of this. The nice thing about being up a little bit higher is that I can move in and out of this a little more fully, right? And feel the weight of my body when it's in this little bit tipped position, and working through those stages of righting myself. Right? One more time. All right. Step off. And before we shift sides, just pause in standing. Notice how you feel on the leg we've been working through. Notice how you feel on the leg we haven't yet worked through. What do you feel in your feet and heels, up through the backs of your knees, into the whole hip spiral? So our hips have this spiraling of energy. It's like a tornado, a vortex, right? From the heels, things start to spiral up until they hit the hips and all through the pelvis. All of this energy spirals up towards our shoulders. If you look at a map of the muscles, you'll see this spiraling. This is how we transfer energy physically on this plane, on the earth. Spirals, spirals. Okay, so we're gonna come to our second leg. So again, we start with our feet wide, wider than hip width apart. Tipping side to side, just shifting your weight. Notice how that feels in the two hips. Like, whew, I really want to go this way, right? This way is like, oh, this hip is a little, it's what feels like tighter to me. And so sometimes we describe something as being tight, and it's not necessarily that your muscles are short, right? That you have to lengthen them or stretch them. They're just not being served. And so the master of our bodies is our nervous system. And if something isn't being served, then the nervous system says, well, don't use it, right? Don't use it. So it's that use it or lose it. We need to use it, and then our nervous system knows it's there, and it'll go to it. All right, so I'm going to shift my weight to my second leg. Second favorite leg is one of my favorite sayings. I'm shifting all the way as far as I can. Body has tipped. Start to notice how you are connected to the earth. What do you feel happening in your foot? What do you notice happening in your knee, right? Knee bends. On this side, it's tracking inwards, bending inwards. So what do I have to do on this leg to correct it? It's going to feel as if I'm externally rotating it. Okay? It's just moving it to neutral. Already I can feel that becoming active through here. Driving down through the heel, so I'm becoming actively grounded. And then foot to the back of the shoe, and just that little more outer hip engagement, and I'm neutral. Doing it one more time on this side. Groundedness, neutral leg, active groundedness, foot to the back of the shoe, outer hip squeezes in. Repeat it if you'd like to. As you're ready, come to where your feet are now underneath you. Shift your weight. Right? So these are the actions that we would take when we're walking the earth, when we are doing that human action of walking, bipedalism. And some people will walk and sway their hips, right? Or twist their upper body. Those are kind of like skipping the connections to the earth that would come from our feet through our legs, through our hips, and get this spiraling of energy up, right? So again, I'm tipping as far as I can. I'm noticing how my foot is connected. I'm noticing what's happening to my thigh. Again, if I bend my knee, it's still kind of collapsing in just a bit. I'm going to correct that. Right away, I feel a difference in my foot. I'm going to get more active through my heel, rooting down like it's a big tap root going down. Foot to the back of the shoe. Outer hip a little active. Here I go. I'm balancing. My other leg can swing. Right? So, shoop, from here, how do we get to balanced verticality from the ground up? Find your way. Okay. Once you've found that, feel free to stay on the ground if coming up higher doesn't feel safe for you. Right? So come onto your block or not, and it can be a book. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Shift. Right, so this is like if you were a sailor, you would say, oh, I'm listing, right? The boat is listing. And now I'm going to use my rudder, my keel, and keel haul myself up into an upright posture, right? Through, the sail doesn't correct itself, right? The sail tips you because the wind's going through. It's what you do below the boat, right, that matters. So think about how you're connecting to the earth. And we're just going to do a few more of these. Right? And when you're ready, step off and pause. Notice what your legs feel like. Notice if you can feel, if you root down in standing and you think about these cues like neutral legs, feet to the back of the shoes, little action in the outer hips, like you're kind of squeezing yourself in and pulling this energy up. Head to the heavens. You are the conduit of energy from the earth up, like a tree, right? And if you'd like to practice tree pose here, it'd be awesome. This would be a perfect time to practice tree pose. However, I'm going to take us to the next part of our practice, right? And we're gonna start to quiet down. We're going to take a little stretch for the hips, and we're going to come back to a seat. So again, feel free to do whatever you'd like as we take a moment or two to get back down to the ground. And I'm going to adjust the camera so it's pointed down just a little bit more. As we come onto the ground, we're going to be doing what I call pinwheel legs. And we're going to come into a real modified version of sometimes called half pigeon pose or a number 4 pose. But we're actually going to just keep our knees in this position. And we're going to work through our hips in this position. One hip will be a little more contracted and one will be a little bit more stretched. But we're going to try to actually be active through the stretch. So this is a lengthening of this back hip, but also we're going to try to be active. So the first thing I want you to do is think about your feet, heels, we're flexing those ankles, and heels to the back of the shoe so you can feel the backs of your legs. My knees are bent to about a 90-degree angle here, right? So try not to pull your feet in really close. Keep your feet a little bit out away from your hips. So again, kind of square ankles in your knees. Flex those feet, feet to the back of the shoes. Now what I want you to think about is this leg that's kind of behind you. You're probably listing, you're probably tipping over this way. And we're going to try to get this hip as much as we can grounded. Again, this is a place where you might stick a block or a blanket. behind this hip unless it just goes all the way down to the floor. If it easily goes down to the floor without this knee coming up, because we're going to be pushing this knee down, right? Maybe stick something underneath there. So I'm going to grab my pillow. I'm going to put it underneath my hip. Feet are flexed, feet to the back of the shoes. Now I can feel something under that hip and I'm pushing into it. Simultaneously, this knee, I'm going to try to push into the floor. And again, if it's really far away, I'm just going to grab this ball. I'm just going to put it under my knee because it's not quite touching the floor, right? So hip touching the prop or the floor behind you, outer knee touching the ground or a prop in front of you. Take your arm, whichever hip's behind you, take that arm, reach it up. And we're going to take a twist here. You're going to turn your torso towards the knee that's in front of you. So a nice big rotation here. Pull through your arm all the way into your fingertips as you root down to your props. Several breaths here. If you can lower your body down without tipping your hip up or moving away from your prop, continue to lower, rotating your body towards this leg, right? Few nice big breaths here. This is a great time to kind of feel the connection from your hip now up through your lumbar spine. Big, huge, strapping, strong lower back, connective tissue there, a big tendinous sheath. Maybe you can feel the work coming up through your shoulder, this vortex of energy coming up through your body. We're going to take a couple more breaths, and again, you might be lower, you might be higher. Wherever you are is perfect. Stay grounded through your hip and your knees. And you could think about this. Think about lifting your feet. Just think about it. Remember, we're still coming to the back of our shoes with those feet, and just think about lifting your feet, getting that rotation into your thighs. So this back leg is internally rotating, front leg is externally rotated. And if you were able to lift your ankles, and not just your toes, right, where toes are staying flexed, it'd be about lifting the ankles, getting a little deeper into that rotation. All right, last breath on this side. As you're ready, come on up. Stretch your knees out, wiggle your toes. Get ready for your second favorite side. Rotating your knees. Coming into that pinwheel kind of look through your knees. Thinking about the back side of your hips. Can you easily root down to the floor? If not, stick something under there so you have a sense of connection, right? Push down, flex your feet, feet to the back of the shoes. If your front knee is in the air, place something underneath it. Reach up through your back hip side. Reach up, stretch through that arm. Reach as high as you can. Reach all the way through your fingers, and then begin this rotation. Right, so we're feeling this vortex, this spiraling from our hips up into our bodies. And again, feel free to lower yourself or not. Try not to lose your feet. They're still flexed. They're pushing to the back of the shoes. Your hip is pushing into your bolster. Your knee is pushing into your block or your blanket or whatever you have. Maybe it's pushing, maybe those are reaching to the floor. Continue to take some nice deep breaths. Develop relationships. Develop a sense of connection through your body. And again, you can challenge yourself a little bit more by thinking about lifting your feet. So that would just take these rotations into a little more active position. Notice how strong the mind is here. Just thinking about feet to the back of the shoes. Just thinking about lifting the feet and ankles. You notice it, right? So the power of the mind, really stunning, right? Few more breaths. And then as you're ready, come on out, stretch your legs out however you'd like to. Take a moment. we're coming towards the end of this class. I'm going to end with a meditation and a quote, and then I'll stop the video. As we're coming towards the end of the class, if you'd like to stay in a seated position like I am in, go ahead and stay seated. However, if you want to come back into that supine position, laying on your back position, what we call shavasana or corpse pose, right? Feel free to do that. Get as comfortable as you can in the arms of Mother Earth, all right? So what does your body communicate to you? What are your needs right now? What do you notice about the movements that we've done today? How does it feel? What connections have you made? What understandings about how your body works? Bringing energy, a conduit of energy from the earth up. What have you learned about the power of the mind, working from the top down? Just take this in as information, as communication. I have a teacher that I studied with last fall, and she described the 4 kinds of communications according to Ayurveda, according to ancient medicine. The first type of communication is just lip service. Words come out, but there's really not any meaning. The second kind of communication is intelligence. Like the words are coming out and there's meaning behind the words, but it's just what we might call academics, right? It's information. Not that it's not important. And even, just lip service can be something that's helpful. Somebody saying something nice to you is helpful. Words matter. We were told as children, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We know that's a lie. We know that words matter. So even lip service can be an important kind of communication. Having some type of knowledge to share is important. I'm not diminishing these kinds of communications. But there's deeper ways to communicate. There is communication that comes through the mouth, that comes through the brain, but the origin is in the heart. So now we have this kind of academics being served by compassion, by love, by a deeper connection. The fourth kind of communication comes from the gut. You might call this intuitive communication, non-verbal. It can actually manifest from this power structure at our center without even coming through the lips. I've experienced this. I'm sure you have too. We usually maybe experience it through interpersonal relationships. But when it comes through yourself, it's intuitive. It's internal relationships from gut to brain. And this is one of the most important ways of learning to communicate, but also to deeply listen. Your ears are up here. How often have you listened to your gut? How often have you listened to what your body is communicating to you? Intuition is something we're all born with, but it's a skill. I was born with 5 fingers, but if I want to play the piano with those 5 fingers, I have to develop communication, which is a skill between those fingers and what my eyes and ears and mind know as music. So this music of movement in our bodies, we have to develop the skill of communication. The sensation is part of that communication. A cramp, communication. A different feeling, energy, direction. All of these things are communications inside our bodies. So coming to this pause, developing the capacity to listen deeply, gut communication to yourself. Closing with a quote. I don't know if you'll be able to see this title, but this is When Women Were Birds by Terry Tempest Williams. And I think this quote is really appropriate. Again, I'm going to read it. I'll let you stay in your meditation state, just allowing it to manifest, the words to kind of go into that intuitive place within you. And then I'll stop the video, but feel free to stay in your meditation. Silence, introduced in a society that worships noise, is like the moon exposing the night. Behind the darkness is our fear. Within silence, our own voice dwells. What is required from both is that we be still. We focus. We listen. We see and we hear. The unexpected emerges. John Cage sees the act of listening as the act of creation. It's not a question of having something to say. Relevant action is theatrical. End of quote. You are a part of a playful universe. This theater of being. What parts are you playing? How are you connecting to the roles that you've taken on? Are you deeply listening to this innermost gut awareness? And can you, in this pause that we are all experiencing right now, connect and direct yourself in a way that is creative and deep and meaningful? One that serves yourself, your family, your home, your community, and your world. We can do it. We can create connections that are beneficial for all. May it be so.